Have you heard from Alaskan Bush People what happened to Amy Brown? She feels like the day isn't getting better and the night is getting longer. She had been through a life-threatening illness and lived through the ups and downs of being in the wild. What happened next didn't even give her a chance to start over. She has a wound that won't heal from losing her beloved husband Billy, and her story right now is just sad. Real life seems to be hitting her harder now that she is alone, out of the spotlight and in complete quiet. She has to face it all by herself. It looks like Amy Brown will die this time because she is getting closer to the shore. Journey to fame around the world. We haven't seen any of the others during COVID. We don't get 2 weeks. Amy Brown's journey from the hardships of the Alaskan wilderness to the worldwide fame of Alaskan Bush People wasn't easy. It was full of challenges, but she overcame them with strength, fire, and unwavering dedication. Many people wouldn't have made it through, but Amy Brown's path shows that it's not so bad if you walk through it with grace. Amy and Billy Brown's life was anything but normal. They were stuck on the strange shores of the Alaskan desert, surrounded by tall mountains, vast, rough landscapes, and dangerous wildlife. Even though they were far from a normal life, they always found a way to deal with the strange things that happened to them every day in the woods. With the help of their own self-taught skills and technical knowledge, Amy and her husband built a shelter for their 7 children from the vast area. They had to enjoy the many things that nature gave them every day, even though they didn't have access to water, power, or technology. The Brown family's story is one of strength and at times dark humor. They had to go through a lot to make it through things good and bad. Millions of people saw it on TV, and it was a lesson that was learned every day. Trust me, it was too hard to ignore. The Brown family went through terrible things that no one could ever imagine. Even though the winters were strange, the wildlife was unexpected, and the weather was harsh, they didn't give up on their goal of living a life without being limited or controlled by society. People loved calling her Amy. She was more than just the mother and leader of the Brown family. She was a gift that opened up in the lives of her family members every day. She did everything she could for her kids and husband. She was brave, strong, and fearless, and she did what any good mother would do. Making decisions about the house was her favorite job, and she never missed a chance to show that side of herself. But behind the bright lights and interesting scenes in the woods, Amy's strength was put to the test in a way that shocked many people, even her biggest fans. Even so, it was an important test, because not many people could stay together in such a fierce fight. As the show turned into a national song and the family became famous, Amy had to deal with a lot of problems that would normally destroy anyone. They had to deal with harsh conditions every day in the wilderness, but that wasn't her problem because she had learned to live above them. What was her problem were the little tasks she had to face that were not typical of her. Amy was told in 2017 that she had lung cancer in its advanced stages. The first sign of the illness became clear when she started having constant pain and lung problems. Because of these early signs, she went to the doctor, who later gave her the diagnosis. It felt like the end of the world for the first time. And this was because experts thought the patient had a very small chance of living. The family was really hurt by this. But they knew this was the point where they had to choose between surviving and taking action. They had already had to deal with the draining effects of not having enough food, harsh weather, and being alone. They wouldn't even think about having to deal with this because it was so important. How were they going to get through this? Different choices kept going through everyone in the family's mind, and it became a worry. They thought about all of their options, but in the end, they had to go to the doctor to at least prove their fears. The family would have to leave the desert they called home for the first time to look for a cure they weren't sure would work. It broke their hearts to have to leave Alaska because they had built their lives around the beauty of nature. Still, they made that sacrifice, and she said she would do it again if it were someone else, without looking back. Amy went through a harsh medical treatment plan. A lot of attention was paid to her during chemotherapy and radiation treatment. Amy started therapy in California, but the camera that caught moments of the Alaskan Bush People wasn't turned off. It kept recording all the time, even the most vulnerable ones. The show that used to show how hard it is to live in the woods had to change its focus, and now looks at the step-by-step survival of a mother who had given up everything for her kids and husband at different times. From this point on, the show wasn't as crazy as it should have been, but was destroyed by an emotional idea that shows how weak people are when they are at their weakest. The audience wasn't left out either. It was like they had front-row seats to see how everything turned out. Fans were always able to get a sneak peek at how this terrible disease was affecting Amy. There was no exaggeration when they said that every moment showed how scared and worried they were. They didn't think things would get this bad, but they wouldn't miss a scene for anything, not even $1 million, since it's right in front of them. Everyone was ready to record everything, even if it meant doing strange things. Every day the illness took away her strength, and she was shocked at how quickly she lost everything she had worked on for years. How quickly did cancer turn the woman who used to be full of life, brave and strong, into a weak ghost? A woman who made it through the inconsistent conditions in the wild Alaskan bush had to face the dangerous animal that was pulling her down with all its might. As Amy started chemotherapy, radiation, and other common treatments, her care took a new turn. She slowly lost her hair and other things as well. Every day her body got smaller. The sickness had spread all through her body. Her body was really struggling to get back on track after the damage the sickness had done. As the days turned into weeks and then months, the sickness that was the beast was moving slowly. Amy used to be able to handle the challenges of living in the thick Alaskan wilderness, but now she had no choice but to believe the medicine that was brought to her on a gold platter. However, Amy came back better in 2018 after a terrible battle with cancer that took away most of her life. When she got over her cancer, it was no longer there, and her world, which was already full of questions, started to see a glimpse of hope. For her, it was a dream come true. For once, she didn't think 7 months would be enough time to get over it. Even though the hands of recovery were all over her, her body never went back to how it was. Being sick had already caused her a lot of trouble, and it left a scar that is hard to get rid of fully. Her lungs were never open, and it was hard for her to breathe when she wasn't with the friend we used to know. So she can go about her daily life, she now has to deal with the difficult job of changing the way she breathes. It was worse than the lung problem itself when the weather changed. During the winter, she wasn't herself at all, and even a mild cold made her feel bad, especially since she knew she might be sick. She always had the thought of what would happen if she fell badly into that world. A woman who had become strong by dealing with nature's challenges was no longer lively. She was only a shadow of the person she used to be. But Amy wouldn't say no, even though she was going to have a health problem soon. In the Alaskan bush wilderness, she kept doing what she was supposed to do, and kept being the motherly figure she was to her family. Remission was still a fight that had a long way to go. It hit her harder than anyone could have imagined how fragile she really was. The most troubling thing was that she had to balance her new life with her time in the Alaskan bush. She did make it through, but in her new life, making it through meant a lot more than just enduring the discomforts of the desert. But how to go about her daily life since she knew her body would never be the same again? Fans who were worried about her never turned their backs on her. Instead, they kept an eye on her health records and told her how they thought she would win the battle. A lot of her friends told her she should leave Alaska's harsh winters for warmer places closer to her hospital, where she had a better chance of getting better, than being in the Alaskan bush and having their health get worse. Amy turned down her friends' attempts to talk her into what they saw as a solution. But she said that life outside of the Alaskan bush would be a death sentence, which she fully accepted. Her story turned into one of quiet, unseen bravery. A woman who thought she could beat all odds, even though every day brought new problems. But behind the scenes, she wouldn't face the painful truth. Even the strongest champions reach a point where they realize their strength can only take them so far. her worst fears coming true again. They saw what they called nodes on the CT or MRI scans they did on her throat. That doctor told us to see another doctor, so we did. When Amy thought she was finally beating her long fight with cancer, the fear she had pushed down for years came back to haunt her. Amy Brown's health got so bad in March 2024 that it was clear she needed to take a break from living in the Alaskan woods. Even if she didn't want to follow through with this idea, getting sick would make her change her mind. Her lung problems, which she had been able to handle since she was no longer being treated for cancer, suddenly got much worse. They give her medication for 4 hours through an IV. There is a lot of trouble going on right now. That wasn't just the normal trouble that people face when they try to get over an illness. It was a lot more than that. It was an emergency that would do more damage than anyone could have imagined if it wasn't dealt with quickly. Even though she fought cancer with bravery and zeal, her lungs were getting worse and weren't getting better. Years of radiation and chemotherapy had made her lungs weak, and they couldn't keep up with her body's changing needs. Any kind of delay at this point could lead to a disaster that would make the family feel terrible. So quickly, the choice was made to move her to a better hospital with more equipment where she would be watched. When she got to the hospital, doctors were in a hurry to help her before things got worse. They gave her anesthesia and a breathing tube to keep her alive while they looked for the best way to keep her oxygen level stable before it dropped too low to recover. As the hours went by, the worries grew stronger. For days, Amy didn't respond to anything, and the doctors tried everything they could to save her, but failed. Every time they tried to slowly pull her out of sleep, her body never responded with the right amount of strength because it was so weak. What she saw at first as a spark of hope turned into something she never prayed for over time. Every hour was different, and Amy's spirit, which used to be full of life, was now fighting to live in her body. While the doctors were waiting for a good result, nothing really interesting happened every hour. At that point, the most important thing was that her oxygen level kept dropping every minute until it reached an unbelievable level. In all of these cases, the medical staff worked very hard to keep things stable and stop any further damage that could have changed the whole story. At this point, it was clear that this wasn't her normal regular scare, but something very different from how things had always been done. What would happen to this whole situation in the end? The Brown family was thinking all of these things and more. She had her family with her at all times, watching every move. But the hospital was filled with fear, which could be seen on their faces. There was no doubt that this was different from the past. The worst thing they were afraid of was that she wouldn't get better as they watched her fall further. The truth about the whole thing was slowly coming out. They wished they could stop it or go back in time to when she was doing her normal job. Things got even worse after a week in the hospital, and the Alaskan Bush family came to a number of conclusions in case their fears were finally realized. It was getting harder for Amy's body to work every second, and the doctor couldn't do anything about it. She was no longer the brave and confident matriarch who carried the family on her shoulders. Instead, she was chained by the effects of her cancer treatment and could not do anything. At this point, the pain was so strong that she couldn't move. It would take a miracle for her to do so. She was stuck in bed and lying in the shadows of her healing. There was no way for the doctors to help her, even though they didn't give up on her right away, because it didn't help her either. You couldn't deny that she was weaker than she used to be, even if you only looked at her. She could hardly stand. Rapidly, things were falling apart, and no matter what was done, they couldn't be stopped. Every day, her family's fears got worse, and the hope they used to have for each other was gone. After that, her children started to share their anger about the problem their mother was still having. In the same way, they were shocked because they had never thought things would go so badly so quickly. For the first time, they didn't know what the future held and didn't believe in any hope that came their way. The doctor's reports kept coming back to them, and their fears got worse as the days went by. They started to talk badly to each other behind closed doors in ways they never thought would be in their nature. She is getting weaker, and if we are being honest, She is just one step away from dying. They could see that it wouldn't get harder than it is now. And they all knew that their dear mother was about to go through the worst thing that could happen. The woman who used to carry them through tornadoes and storms in the woods slowly finished a chapter that seemed to end too soon. It dawned on them that this might be the end as they saw her health get worse and worse through the hours. Breach in the family. Okay, here's a warning. If something comes at you, pull your head back right away so you don't lose a piece of your face. As Amy's health got worse, the picture got better as the days went by. Because she was there, everything was held together. And since she's not with them right now, no one has filled in the holes. Critics and watchers alike admired how well the family members stuck together, but it was breaking down quickly and couldn't be stopped. The Brown children had been public supporters of their mother up until now, visiting her many times and showing the world how much they loved her. She is getting better. In a live stream with fans, her son Noah once said something beautiful about his mom's sad condition. She will soon be able to go home. But away from the cameras, the family was having a heated argument that would eventually blow over. A family that used to be happy and peaceful would now have to deal with some kind of indifference that destroyed their peaceful atmosphere. As things began to fall apart, people around the world, especially Bush family fans in Alaska, were unhappy with how things were going. In April 2025, Noah Brown, the last son of the Brown family, asked for a welfare check because their mother was being mistreated, even though she was in a life-threatening situation. He thought something was wrong, so the only way to find out the truth was to get to the bottom of the problem. Amy Brown, their mother, was given time off from the hospital at this point, but only if they agreed to meet all of her needs without any judgment, and making sure she got the right medical care. This seemed like a good sign, but Noah said that his family was acting in a very different way than what doctors had told them to do. This was a deal breaker for him that broke everything. How could they be so mean when their mother was hit so hard that she died? When the simplest advice was given to them, all they could think about was becoming cruel. Everyone was shocked by this. There was a lot of chaos in the Brown family, which everyone thought was stable and living in love, peace, and unity. Even their biggest fans could see how things were falling apart. Court papers showed that the family had a lot of problems. As time went on, more and more charges were made public. There were also claims of drug use and dangerous living conditions in the home. The most shocking claim that really set off the investigation was that Amy was given meth. This family didn't look like the one that was shown before. They showed complete disrespect for the image that had been built up over the years. Right in front of Amy's eyes, the most important family ties were severed, leaving no way for making peace. And just as quickly as things were falling apart, the legal fight quickly sank what little of the Brown family was left. Her daughter Rain and her husband were arrested for things that seemed too bad to be true while the case was going on. Not only did the arrest ruin what was left, it also showed how inconsistent the family was. It didn't have to end this way if it was going to end this way, but what was once called the closest family relationship ever was now full of disagreements as each member looked for plenty of chances to do the obvious. Amy was still being closely watched in the hospital to help her get better, so she wasn't in a good enough state to bring the kids back together after she thought she had left them in good shape. Even though the doubt was hard on her feelings, she had no choice but to watch how it would end, since she couldn't do anything else. Amy had grown to count on her family's love and support, but now she had to face the truth that her family was broken up. We all knew it would, but it really broke her. The ongoing fight in her family made her feel useless while she was in the ICU. She was an important part of the family, but now she was in danger of falling apart because she had to fight to stay and fix what she had made over the years. People used to admire the family for how strong, dedicated, and loving they were, but things were falling apart faster than anyone could have imagined. A popular story that was reported in the media had gone off track and couldn't be fixed. The fights within the company had done more damage and looked like they could last for 10 years. Amy's fight to stay alive was no longer a choice. It was a must that she couldn't fail at, even if it meant going the extra mile. A story figure that is shrinking. Rain still has lessons every day because she is the youngest. Do you remember how your ironed oxygen molecule is put together? Recovery for Amy was supposed to be the most important thing after she got out of the hospital. Still, it wasn't what everyone thought it would be. It was just a sign of what was to come. Things that happened recently took away the happiness that should have given her family hope. The process had gone deeper than most people thought it would, and Amy would never be the same again. She used to be brave, hardworking, and beautiful. She would always have a scar from the radiation therapy, pneumonia, and other problems that were connected to it. A GIF would not be able to erase it. She was no longer free to feel like herself again. She had to carry oxygen tubes with her everywhere she went, which made her realize that a lot had gone wrong since she last left the Alaskan bush. Her steps were helped by a system of people, so she didn't have to do them alone like she did before. No longer did she have the energy that made her a superwoman, even in the harshest conditions of the Alaskan desert. She had to do what the doctor told her to do. She no longer has to do the hard things that are part of her daily duties as the mother of the Brown family, so she spends most of her time sitting. Now that she has nothing but thoughts of the good times she had in the wilderness, she has to go down memory lane. The Alaskan mother, who used to be seen bringing churns of logs, taking care of her kids, and doing all the things that needed to be done every day, is now stuck in a chair. Things could not get worse. To the point where she could only make do with what she saw going on around her, her whole world had crushed. Her speech, which used to sound authoritative, has lost its tone. So she has to be very careful when she speaks, as if she is counting her words. Not only that, but her face has changed in strange ways that can be seen. The life it held through the rough Alaskan desert is now marked by a pale drip, which means it will take her a long time to get better. Both physically and emotionally, she is worn out beyond repair. Now her boys have to make up for all the losses she's had over the years by giving her emotional and physical support. They made sure she didn't trip by leading her every step and holding her down as they went over the rough ground. But these outings didn't make them feel as confident as they used to. Before, Amy was a very busy grandmother who wasn't often seen. The woman whose family really admired her is now just a shadow of herself. There was no way to go back in time. People no longer saw Amy as the lively and independent person they had always wanted to see. She just barely made it. Now she has to fight the battle that her body found her in the middle of the night. When will this be over? No one knows. Nature alone can decide. People who used to see her grow in the wildest parts of Alaska's wilderness now have to watch her fall apart. To be honest, it's heartbreaking to see the strong matriarch fall apart. The woman who once showed everyone how to live happily in a place that made it easy to get worse is now down and hope that nature will smile on her again. Outside it's quiet, but inside it's moving apart. You don't have to live dirty just because you live in the bush. We clean, do laundry, and try to look good. It's good for your mental health. The last time the Brown story played out in the news during the previous season was in 2022. Many people hoped it would have gone on longer, but the public silence meant they couldn't get around it on their own. Before this, they had been able to watch regular broadcasts that told the stories of different seasons and events of their lives in the Alaskan wilderness. The problems, successes, discomforts, and difficulties were all written down, giving a picture of what it was like to live off the land. This went on for a while, but as soon as the cameras stopped, the show crashed like it never happened. The Browns lost their public voice, and something that was meant to bring people together had to go through the worst fight ever. Fans were very interested in Amy's health, but they could only get a glimpse of it from time to time through seasonal posts on social media. Since there was no show to keep everyone up to date on Amy's health, her health became something that people who were hungry didn't see. The family had to deal with their problems on their own because there were no cameras around to record their battles and disappointments. Since there weren't many updates on Amy's health lately, social media posts were the only way to find out what was going on, and they are truly sad. The posts never gave any information about what was really going on. They only helped people understand how bad Amy has become lately. Fans who had stuck with it and shown their support for the family were left with bits and pieces of information spread out all over the internet. Everything about the family's image got worse every day, and things are only going to get worse from here on out. Since then, Amy has been out of the public eye because there will be no more episodes showing her progress, weaknesses, strengths, and how she sometimes fights for life. The show is over, and now there is only a woman trying to stay alive, and her family trying to help her in any way they can. Amy, will you ever get better? We hope so. We thought the chances would be better, but they aren't as good now that her beloved husband has died and she has to face what each day brings. It's not like Amy used to take care of everyone. She needs help now. Even though her body could handle the stress of living in the Alaskan woods, it can't do a single thing without help anymore. Breathing problems have messed up the scene. For now, Amy will have to deal with how weak she is. Her life, which used to be the center of Alaskan Bush People, has been turned into a mess of sorrow. Things aren't just bad for her health. Also, her family is held together by a thread. Which one would she keep? Every day it gets harder. Amy Brown is still alive. We're hoping for the best until we hear some good news. What would you do if the person carrying a family had to get help from someone else to stay alive? What do you think? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and follow.